Good to see you. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our final general session of the 2019 Society Leadership Conference. I'm John Scott, and I have the privilege of leading the Society's development and community leadership efforts, and I'm pleased to be here with you all today and to be presenting with Debra.
Thank you, John. I have the pleasure of being your chapter president for Kentucky and Southeast Indiana here at the National MS Society. What an amazing conference this has been. Let's give all of our team a round of applause. I'm so excited to be here and to help wrap up this last session of what has truly been an inspiring and very motivating week.
Absolutely. There have been some amazing sessions that we've had this morning, and I hope you feel motivated and equipped with the information and ideas that you need to fulfill your role as a leader in the MS movement. We're counting on you to bring your time, to bring your passion and talent, to help propel us forward and to keep achieving breakthroughs and raising funds to fuel the mission.
We've heard so many amazing stories the last few days, stories of how each of us can make a lasting impact on the lives of everyone affected by MS. There are nearly 1 million people living with MS in the United States, and we need to be there for each one. Each of their journeys is unique. Every one of their lives matters, and no one should face MS alone. And every one of us has the power to achieve breakthroughs, uncover solutions, and help create a world free of MS. I hope that you've all found this week to be rewarding and enlightening and honestly as energizing as I have.
We've celebrated so much progress, and there's still critical work to be done. And just as every bit of our progress is a credit to each and every one of you in the room and the thousands of others who aren't with us today, it's also the responsibility of each of us in the room to keep pushing forward, to change the world for every person affected by MS. The world is changing at a faster pace than ever before, and so as a movement and as an organization, we must also change with it. As our research progress and as we improve our diagnosing MS, people are being diagnosed earlier in their lives. Whereas 30 years ago, most people were diagnosed in their 30s and 40s and sometimes even later, today's generations are being diagnosed in their early 20s and even teens at an increasing rate. The needs, the concerns, the challenges, the decisions that facing someone who has just found out that they have a diagnosis is so much different with someone who is facing it in childhood as someone who is facing it early in adulthood. Whereas younger people where younger people go for information, for connections for information, is significantly different too.
And it's more important than ever to connect new people to the MS movement. As we've heard throughout the conference, research funded by the Society that was released just earlier this year shows that nearly 1 million people are living with MS in the United States. When we examined our own database to see how many of that nearly 1 million are connected with the Society, we found that 40% of the people living with MS in the U.S. haven't connected to their National MS Society and the services, resources, and connections that we have available. And regardless of where people are in their journey and what they need, we know that we need every single one of them to accelerate progress. We are more better positioned than ever to foster more connections and achieve greater impact. So how must we be as leaders, John, to get there?
So we've made, as an organization, the journey we've made and in the movement from the time that the MS Society was founded 73 years ago to today is reflected in the unique journeys of people who have MS who we are here to serve. Throughout this session today, we'll be talking to people who are living with MS, who have been diagnosed at different times across the history of our organization. Through their perspectives and the stories that we'll hear, we'll celebrate, one, how far we've come, and we'll focus on the opportunities to continue to address the needs of those we serve in a more rapidly changing world.
Thank you, John. I'd like to welcome Cohen to the stage. Aaron has lived with MS since his diagnosis in the late 70s, when being diagnosed with MS was a little bit of a different experience than it is today. Last night, Aaron's wife and her Walk MS team were recognized for raising over $1 million for the cause.
Yeah, she's quite something, isn't she?
She is. Thank you so much for being here. Can you tell me a little bit more about your experience of being diagnosed with MS, back in the 70s, which to me feels like 20 years ago?
It was, well, let's just say that my diagnosis was not crisp. Let me take you back to the 1970s. No cell phones, no internet. If you wanted information, you had to go to the library. There were no diagnostic tools really for MS except for lumbar puncture, which didn't tell you that much. We were 5 years away from the first MRI of the brain, and probably 10 years before they were generally available. We were 20 years away from any DMTs, so there was nothing really that anyone could do. They could just give you a diagnosis. Mm-hmm. And all the brilliant, earnest fellows that we had the pleasure of spending this week with were not born yet. But I started with some optic neuritis, went to the health services at college. They sent me to an eye doctor, said, oh, it'll probably go away. Today, if you went and got an optic neuritis diagnosis, you would be referred to a neurologist, you would be in for an MRI, but back then they didn't really want to deal with it, because who wants to tell a 20-year-old that you've got an incurable disease?
So when you were finally diagnosed, what did the doctor tell you about your disease, MS, the solutions at the time, and how you should manage it?
Well, I had some gait problems, and I went to my doctor, and he said, oh, you need to go to a specialist in the city, somebody I know. And I went into the city. I got an appointment for a couple weeks later. By the time I got into the hospital to have my tests, the symptoms were gone. And they said, oh, I'm not going to put you through all the tests. Just go home and conserve your energy, avoid stress, and wait to see if anything else happens.
Sounds so easy.
Well, he said, in my experience, you have MS, but we don't know what it's going to do. Enjoy yourself.
So did you end up following that advice? Did you just go home and take it easy and live a stress-free life?
I cut back on a few of my extracurricular activities and quickly got bored with that and just went on with my life. My wife and I had children. When my first daughter was born, my main goal was to live long enough for her bat mitzvah. I had a fatal disease. The only thing I knew about it was a friend of my parents who had died in the VA hospital with a very aggressive form of progressive MS. I now have 3 children, all married. I have 4 grandchildren, and as you can see up there, and life is good.
It sounds like your family brings you so much joy. And now we know that staying active is an important part of managing MS. And most physicians are encouraging activity versus cutting back. Is that what you've experienced?
I've always been active. I have a hand tricycle that I ride. I work out in the gym. I work out with a personal trainer. And if anybody has some extra money, a personal trainer is a great idea. But nobody's ever told me to increase my physical activity. The neurologists tend to focus on neurology and not necessarily on the whole person. I think that's a mistake. When we finally cure this disease, and I've been living with the fantasy that I will be cured for 45 years now. I want to have some muscle tone left so that I can do something with that.
So I definitely agree that there's opportunities in that area. Earlier you talked about how long it took you to get diagnosed. How do you think the fear and the lack of understanding by the medical community in general contributed to that?
I think that back in the 70s, nobody ever said multiple sclerosis out loud. And if they did, it was in hushed tones because...
It's not a dirty word, right?
Oh, absolutely. It was terribly scary. And nobody wanted to have to deal with telling a 20-year-old that they had a fatal incurable disease. And it takes somebody who really understands it. I think that physicians in general have a much better understanding of what multiple sclerosis is now, and neurologists in particular. And I think we're making good progress toward looking at the total patient rather than just the symptoms.
So it sounds like you're saying that you feel like people in general have a better knowledge and understanding of MS than they did back then.
Doctors, yes. People with MS, yes. The general public, not so much. There are so many hidden symptoms, so many different cases of MS, so many different ways of looking at the disease. I think that most people in the general public, unless they know several people with MS, have no idea of the total, the large number of different types of ways it can affect people.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Aaron. My name is Kristen Clifford. I'm the Society's Vice President of Healthcare Access. You've made great points about how far we've come since you were diagnosed 40 years ago, but there's still a lot of important work to do to make sure that everyone with MS has access to high-quality healthcare.
Well, I think the National Multiple Sclerosis Society has done a lot to make that possible and to make the diagnosis not nearly as scary as it was back then.
Thank you again so much for sharing your story. As we've already discussed, so much has changed in the world and in our movement since its founding. And one of the most critical advancements has been in the field of research, since research has driven so much of our solutions and our knowledge about the disease. Since our founding in 1946, we've paved the way for nearly all of the treatment options that are available today, none of which existed 30 years ago. We've also brought the world together to set standards for diagnosing MS quickly, accurately, and so much more. And now we're looking forward to the next chapter of what we can accomplish. I'd like to welcome Dr. Carolyn Whitaker. Dr. Whitaker, I know you have a lot to share on this topic. Thank you for being with us, and congratulations again on your Lifetime Achievement Award.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kristen. I'm so delighted to be here with you and with all of you this morning, and I'm so inspired by what I've seen at this meeting this week. The research presented at the Tyson Research Conference by the MS Society Fellows has me very excited about all that is going on in the MS research field.
That's wonderful. Could you tell us a little bit more about your journey with the Society and your part in helping to direct our research portfolio?
So I began my involvement with the Society as an MS Research Fellow in 1976, when we didn't have any of the disease-modifying treatments that we have today. So now I'm a member of the National Board of Directors, the Budget Development Advisory Committee, that's a real challenge for me, and I advise on the commercial research portfolio as a part of the Fast Forward Board of Managers. So I also have the privilege of chairing the Research Programs Advisory Committee, which is abbreviated RPAC for obvious reasons. This is the Society's advisory committee that oversees all the research aspects of the Society. So my role as the chair of that committee is to lead a group of stellar individuals who participate in all aspects of MS research. We recommend funding priorities for grants submitted to the Society. We make recommendations on new directions for MS research, And we work closely with the Society's research staff, particularly Vice President Bruce Bebo, on all aspects related to research. So that could be scientific aspects of the research. It could be personnel policies. It could be compliance matters. So we do simply anything related to research for the Society.
MS research has changed significantly since you began as a researcher. It moves faster today, and luckily, there's more researchers than ever before. Could you share how the RPAC is thinking about that and where we're really focusing our efforts?
Sure. So I've been a part of the RPAC for almost 25 years, which seems, hard to believe. But I've seen a lot of change during that time. And it used to be very sort of cut and dried, making strict funding decisions based on sort of where peer review committees drew the funding line. But over time, the RPAC has become much more involved with research directions for the Society. And most recently, and I'm very excited about this, coming up with guidelines about how we more involve individuals living with MS in the grant review process to help us assess impact of that research. Also, the RPAC sets priorities to identify scientific breakthroughs that would have the greatest impact on people living with MS to help guide what we fund. So if we work towards finding or funding research that will answer these particular questions, we know we're working towards the areas of greatest impact for everyone affected by the disease. So what are these areas? They are, why do some people get MS and others don't? What is the cause of MS? This is a question that has puzzled scientists for over 150 years. How do we stop MS progression? How do we repair the damage caused by MS? And lastly, how do we reverse symptoms and promote wellness?
Thank you for sharing what those really crucial and impactful questions are. Will you tell us more about the recent work that the RPAC is doing that's really focused on finding pathways to a cure?
So this is something I'm very excited about. And earlier this year, the RPAC focused our discussion around the Society's strategic priority to develop an international consensus on pathways to a cure. That is one of the specific goals spelled out in our strategic plan. So this is an initiative that is designed to align global research resources around defining pathways to stop MS, restore function, and end MS. We're using, I think that's worthy of applause. So we're using the International Progressive MS Alliance as our model here, where the resources of many different countries are focused toward making an impact on progressive MS. So if you just think about that for a minute, that's really powerful. And it's a unique model worldwide where researchers from many different countries are focused on a unified series of goals to stop MS, restore function, and end MS forever. That's powerful. So I know of no other disease where researchers worldwide come together to pursue an agreed upon agenda. So over the next few months, we are working towards that agenda.
That is so exciting. Could you explain, though, why the Society and RPAC thinks about it in terms of one or multiple pathways to a cure?
So I think that's an important point, that it's cures rather than just a cure. Because we know that a cure, singular, will look different for different people with MS. And for some people, being able to stop the disease is critical, as it will prevent further disability and damage. For those who may be further along or who have a more progressive form of the disease, a true cure would be to regain function that they have lost. And for future generations, ending MS means being able to prevent future cases of the disease from happening in the first place. So this work is especially exciting because the recent strategic focus on pathways to cures marks a real shift in seeing a cure on the horizon for people with MS. And it's a powerful tool to influence all the world's MS research organizations and to all band together to find a cure faster.
Well, it's thrilling to me, to know that the brightest minds in MS research are actively working on funding research across the globe that will get us to a cure as fast as possible. So thank you for sharing all that information. It's very exciting. As we heard from Erin, oh, yes. As we heard from Erin earlier, the research the society funds is changing lives, but it's only as helpful to people with MS as their ability to actually access these breakthroughs through quality healthcare from a knowledgeable physician who gets these solutions into their lives. So with that, I'm excited to welcome Dr. Mitzi Williams.
Thank you.
Dr. Williams is a specialist MS physician and researcher who has been involved in many MS clinical trials. Her research interests include increasing diversity in clinical trials and understanding the course of MS in minority ethnic populations, specifically African Americans. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Williams, and also congratulations on your award yesterday evening.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be sharing with you all in my home city of Hotlanta, although it's not living up to its reputation this weekend.
Could you start by telling us why it's so crucial that people with MS build a trusted partnership with a knowledgeable physician who specializes in MS?
Absolutely. So having access to an MS specialist or a general neurologist who has a special interest in multiple sclerosis is extremely important because it helps ensure an accurate diagnosis, and it makes sure that that diagnosis is not delayed. You know, it really breaks my heart when I see patients who have had symptoms for 5 years or 10 years and abnormal MRIs, and somehow they never got diagnosed. And so we know that starting treatment early can help prevent long-term disability and delay progression, and so we absolutely want to do that. Another important point or reason to see an MS specialist is that you often have a broader range of treatment options, because with the fast pace of many advances and new treatments with multiple sclerosis, it's really hard to keep up for those of us who treat MS every day, but especially for those who may treat many other neurologic conditions. And we may feel more comfortable with some of those newer treatments because we've been following the research, had patients in those clinical research studies, or had more exposure to those different types of therapies.
Yeah, absolutely. So many MS specialist neurologists are also leading research studies, and
Yes.
I mentioned some of your interests in clinical research. And those studies directly affect people with MS, and sometimes their patients can participate in and qualify for participation in those studies. Could you share a little bit about the benefits for people with MS and participating in research studies?
Absolutely. So there are many benefits to participating in clinical research. One of them being that it really is access to cutting-edge therapy before it becomes available to everyone else. So that is one of the direct benefits, as well as contributing to the body of knowledge. So those of you who are familiar know that although we have learned so much about MS, there's a lot that we still have left to learn. And we can't learn that if people are not actively engaged in the research process, however that looks for them. And then finally, I think that it is important for us to not only encourage the whole MS community to be involved, but also to encourage diversity in our clinical research. There are recent studies that suggest, thank you. There are recent studies that suggest that the incidence of MS here in the United States may be highest in some of our ethnic minority groups, such as African Americans, and that the risk may be highest in other populations. And so making sure that everyone is a part of that process can help us understand how disease may be more aggressive in some, or maybe less aggressive or not happen as frequently in others. And so it just contributes to the whole process and helps us understand.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. As a physician in a large metro area like Atlanta, what disparities do you notice that exist in access to healthcare for those who are in more rural or underserved areas? And what do you see as the impact of this disparity for those people?
So there are many healthcare disparities for those that live in the city as well as those who live in rural areas. And often many of them are related to finances. So there can be difficulty traveling to appointments. And you can see that for someone who lives 20 minutes outside of the perimeter, but especially for someone that lives 3 or 4 hours away. I have many patients that travel long distances to come and see me or come and see their MS MS specialist, and that can become a hardship, especially if they have a certain level of disability and they may have to have family members who may lose work, may lose wages and time to come and bring them to those visits. Also, there's difficulty with access to disease-modifying therapies in some locations and access to clinical trials, which are often conducted in more metro areas at universities and other centers. So I think that it's important for us to address those and try to see how we can bridge that gap.
Absolutely.
So Kristen, can you tell us what the society is working on to ensure increased access to those people that are in remote areas?
Absolutely. As you both know, the National MS Society is a trusted source of information and resources for both healthcare professionals and for people affected by MS. Many of the healthcare professionals who are actively engaged in the society are located at MS specialty centers or independent practices with MS expertise, and we will always maintain those crucial relationships. However, as healthcare evolves, more people with MS are receiving their care in community or generalist neurology settings. Currently, there's more than 15,000 community neurologists in the United States. While these professionals absolutely attempt to provide quality care to people with MS, many lack the confidence, or as you mentioned, the experience in using and monitoring the higher, more efficacious treatments. So as a result, sometimes these patients may not be receiving the most contemporary treatments and have a higher risk of disease progression. The Society is committed to ensure that all people living with MS have access to high-quality health care, no matter where they are. So addressing the educational needs of community neurologists is a priority for the National MS Society. There are a lot of aspects to this work, and it's very complex, but one strategy to reach this provider group is through Project ECHO. Project ECHO is a teleeducation, peer-to-peer model that uses case-based learning to share best practices from community neurologists and MS experts, and will leverage web-based technology to focus on learnings and monitor outcomes. The Society completed a pilot of this a few years ago with University of Washington, and this year, in fiscal year 2020, I'm excited to announce that we'll be launching 3 Project ECHO hubs. We're currently developing the criteria for these sites and the curriculum, and we're really excited to expand this model, which is proven, to help to expand the MS workforce and improve access to high-quality care for people living with MS, and really have impact on the confidence of the community neurologists to treat those with MS. So Mitzi, I'm interested in your thoughts on Project ECHO and how you think that will change the care and the relationships between the specialist centers and the community neurologists.
Absolutely, this is huge and this is extremely exciting. You know, I've always felt that it's extremely important for us as specialty centers to develop relationships with community neurologists. And in many cases, even though people may come and see me at a specialty center, they will also have a local neurologist because I obviously can't travel to every part of Georgia if someone has a relapse and you need that connection. So I think that finding ways to strengthen that connection and also provide that information will allow many more people with multiple sclerosis to have better access to treatment and better outcomes. So I'm really excited about it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, this has been a wonderful discussion about how far we've come in the areas of research and in healthcare. I would like to thank both Dr. Williams and Dr. Whitaker for joining me.
Absolutely.
And we are,
Thank you.
thank you. I am very excited to introduce my colleague Karen Hooper, who's the Society's Vice President of Program Engagement and Development, and Dawnia Baynes to take our place.
Thanks, Kristen. Hi, Dawnia.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. So how do you know Mitzi Williams?
That was my neurologist when I lived in Atlanta until 2013.
Wow, small world.
Very small.
Now we
She's
got to hear
wonderful.
about this shirt. We all heard about it last night, so tell us about it.
Yeah, I debated on this shirt. I'm like, I've never been here before. I was excited about coming. I'm like, can I wear a t-shirt here? Will they kick me out? I don't know. And so I wore it today, but this describes my personality. I love all of this. It's me.
Laugh, love, shine.
That's me.
That's you. Well, great. Let's get into our conversation today. So I know that you're going to share your story with us, and I know that you live with MS yourself.
I do.
But I know that MS is part of your life for many years before that because your dad was also diagnosed.
Right. Well, my dad was diagnosed with primary progressive MS in 2000, but he probably started having symptoms in the early 90s. And so I get to be with my dad, learn about him, and people, when they see my dad, they ask me, you know, how long until you're in a wheelchair? And I'm like, that's not how MS works. And so that has been a good thing for me to be able to advocate for him and go with him to his doctor's appointments, because my dad lives in Pittsburgh. And so I get to go to Pittsburgh once a year to go with him to appointments and talk for him regarding different treatments.
So would you say you're your dad's biggest connection to MS?
I absolutely am. And I love that now there's a therapy that my dad can do regarding MS, because they didn't have something for primary progressive. And that picture that was just up there, that's one of the last pictures of my dad and I standing. That was my prom, and probably the last picture was my graduation that we took together standing.
Oh, thanks for sharing that with us.
Of course.
So I know that when your dad was diagnosed, he didn't know anybody else with MS.
Right.
And I know that it's been a primary goal for you to make sure connection's a key part of your disease.
Right.
So tell us what connection means to you and why you think it's so important to people with MS.
Connection is extremely important because I didn't see anyone that looked like me, and so it was nice to be able to learn, like, there's people that look like me, people that, you know, decide to, you know, want to live, and just different things like that.
Mm-hmm. So I know that you shared with me yesterday that people with MS are the best people to understand each other.
Right.
And so we know that MS doesn't discriminate.
Right.
And when it comes to ethnicity, although MS is most common in Caucasians, it affects most ethnic groups.
Right.
And you know, we've talked a lot about this. We're here to help every single person join the movement and make sure that people are connected to us. So I'd love it if you just tell me why you think that's so important. Why should we be focused on making sure everyone with MS sees themselves in this movement?
Right. So once I joined a group, it was nice to be around people where I'm like, oh, I'm not crazy, I'm not lazy. There was no judgment. It wasn't, I never knew that certain things that I was feeling, that other people diagnosed with MS feel that as well. So I appreciate that. And it's just nice to learn different tips and things that people do for MS.
Yeah. So I know you've helped us raise awareness about diversity, and tell us more about why that's important to you.
It's very important because I need to see myself. If I look into a room and I don't see anyone like me, it's like, is it just me, or what can happen, you know, for me, and learning other people. And so I'm working on that, Karen, but I wonder, what is the society doing to increase diversity?
Yeah, we're really working hard at this. Increasing diversity and inclusion is a key priority for us. And we heard our CEO, Cindy, talk to us about this on Thursday, and it's just something that's very important to the society right now. And our key focus at the beginning is really focusing on staff and volunteers and making sure that we're getting that right.
That's awesome.
Diversity and inclusion, we've talked about this, means so many things to so many different groups. And for example, this year, our National Medical Advisory Committee is going to welcome the first female chair in the society's history.
Awesome.
And I think we could see on the screen what the first one looked like. So that's diversity too. And the winners of our prestigious research awards this year were both women for the first time.
Nice. Very good.
We're really trying to create a space for the MS community to tell us what we need to know and to be conveners of diverse perspectives. We're a movement by and for people with MS, and we must be inclusive. We need to hear everybody's voices and all the perspectives. We have a lot to learn and quite a lot of work ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. Saying all people with MS is big. That means a lot. It means all the voices, people everywhere, regardless of what city you live in, what your ethnicity is, what disease course you're living with, from the most newly diagnosed to those with the most advanced MS. We need their voices too.
Absolutely.
We have recently entered into an important and exciting strategic partnership with an education company that's focused on bringing disease-specific education to the Black community. They have a really strong track record of successful changes in health outcomes in diseases like colon cancer and diabetes and heart. And in 2020, we're going to add MS to that list.
All right.
All right?
That.
Sounds good?
Yes, absolutely. That's great.
And I thought the most important synopsis I've thought about in the last year at the Society was a conversation that happened with our Multicultural Council.
Okay.
And that's a group of volunteer leaders, people living with MS and healthcare providers, who were really focused on understanding what Dr. Williams was talking about, that disparity that exists in the African American community and the Latino Hispanic community. And we took a moment, we went around the table and we asked everybody, what is the one goal we have for this committee? And the dream that the whole committee unanimously agreed on is that we would no longer need a committee like that.
That would be
That's what we're going for. Wouldn't that be amazing?
That is awesome. Yeah, I love that. That was great.
So in addition to talking about racial diversity, another important area we're working on is making sure that we're communicating and offering programming and education where people with MS are, where you're already interacting. So that means keeping up to date with social media and technology. Yes. We've heard a lot about that, and investing in the very best digital solutions for people with MS.
Okay.
Now, I know you lead a support group in person.
I do.
But don't you also do a lot of connecting online?
I do. For the teenagers, we meet. There's some that live in Los Angeles. There's a person in Arizona. We've also had someone in Thailand, I believe, at one point. And so we were able to do FaceTime, because we all have iPhones, so that worked out. But if we didn't have iPhones, then we could use Zoom or something like Skype to connect. And then we also do the GroupMe app so that we can kind of text and ask questions, pictures, and all that fun stuff.
Yes. Do you follow the Society on social media?
I do. I actually saw the Facebook Live in September, I believe it was, which was really cool, and being able to see what's going on and get different perspectives and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I just wondered, what's the Society doing or working on to get people's needs met where they are?
Yeah, it's so important to make the most impact possible. To do that, we need to be where the people are, where we all are, and we're online. You're online.
I'm online.
I'm online too. And we connect online, we learn online, we all share online, maybe more than we should sometimes.
Yeah.
But Facebook Live and online support groups are where we know people are going for support and connection. So we need to be there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw, but recently we had a LA neurologist, a specialist in Los Angeles, who did an Instagram takeover for the Society, and she was able throughout a whole work day to answer questions of people with MS live on Instagram.
Fun.
Going where people are. Are you on Instagram?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we know too that you shared about your dad that the needs of people with MS today are very different than they were 20 years ago. And as Dawnia shared with us, the speed of communication and technology weren't available for her dad like they are now.
Right.
Social media has really allowed us to connect to people in a way we've never been able to before. And we really must connect and continue to innovate to meet people where they are. Can you imagine if Sylvia Lowry's newspaper ad, reaching out to others to see if they shared her brother's experience, was a post on social media today? Her message and her intent, the act of reaching out for connection, began our movement.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
That would
How many
be
tweets
awesome.
do you think it would be today?
Thousands.
Thousands. I think so too. Hi, Debra. How are you?
Hi. Not to interrupt this amazing conversation, I just wanted to come out and talk about how interesting this conversation is and how it makes me think about how keeping up to date with the latest technology and social media is especially key when it comes to connecting with the youngest members of our movement.
Absolutely. And wherever we are, when we see someone living with MS who needs support or who hasn't yet connected, we need to reach out and we need to make that connection.
Absolutely.
Now, earlier, Dawnia, you mentioned a group for teenagers all across the world that are chiming in. And are they up there? Are they up there on the screen? Awesome. That's the group right there. Tell us a little bit about how you got that group started and why it was important to you.
Sure. So when I moved to Atlanta, I found a group for people in their 20s to 40s diagnosed with MS. And so there was a young man that was diagnosed at 13 with MS. And so his mom was looking for a group, and she brought him to our group. He was probably 14 at the time. And after the group was over, I told his mom, I was like, I feel like we're corrupting your son. I was like, because I live in California, and so there's medical marijuana, so they're talking about that, and just all these different things. And I'm like, I can't imagine being a teenager diagnosed with MS with nowhere to go. And so I started a group for the teens. So, yeah.
Awesome.
I love that story.
Yeah. Wesley is the first one.
So I don't know about the rest of you, but as being a mom with young children, the thought of teenagers terrifies me. So tell me, and all of us, what you love the most about working with teens.
Oh, okay. So they call me their MS mama now, which I'll take it. I don't have any kids, so that's awesome. But I love being able to give back to them and just show them, like, you can still live. Like, it's a diagnosis, it's not a death sentence. Some of them are one just started college. My goal is to help them get money for college and not have to have the stress of, paying for college. And I bring people in there that were diagnosed as a teen that are like graduating from like USC or whatever it may be, and I get them involved, like Wesley, which he's gonna love that big picture. I can't wait to rub it in. He was part of the We Believe video. He was the guy, I don't know if you guys saw, with the doctor, and so I try to get them involved in stuff like that, and of course advocacy work, so they'll participate in the State Action Day and the walks and stuff like that.
Well, I can tell, because you're the MS mama, as you said, that it's been a gift for you, but what a gift for them to have a place to connect with others like them that they can see themselves in and they can feel less isolated and not alone. And I just especially loved how you saw a need with that poor 14-year-old boy, right? Talking about all those adult issues. You jumped in, you created an opportunity, and it really sets a good example for all of us. So I thank you, appreciate you so much.
My pleasure.
So. I'd like to thank both you and Dawnia for this great discussion about how we can do a better job connecting people to everyone who wants to connect. Thank you. And I'd now like to invite Hannah Schnitzler to join me on the stage. Welcome. Welcome, Hannah, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Hannah, you were diagnosed with MS when you were just 15 years old. You're now 17. But can you tell us a little bit about what it's like to be diagnosed at such a young age?
Yeah, so when I was first diagnosed, I was really confused and scared because I didn't know anything about the disease. All I knew was that there was no cure to it. So I took it upon myself to research the disease itself, and I came across the MS Society's website, and that gave me a lot of outlets to go to for information.
Wonderful. So when you were researching on the website and Googling MS, using Dr. Google, as we call it, what about having MS and learning about that surprised you the most?
I would say I surprised myself the most with my attitude about it. I try not to dwell on things when it comes to my disease. I look at the bright side, that like I'm still okay, I can still get through things. I feel as though it doesn't define me. If anything, it makes me stronger and more resilient because I've gained confidence from having MS.
I wish I had that type of confidence. So being diagnosed with MS at a young age comes with different experiences and challenges. How has having MS affected your education?
When I was first diagnosed, I switched over from public school to cyber school because it was more easygoing for me. I could work at my own pace and I could get work done, and when I had to miss school because of symptoms, then I wouldn't have to do that when it came to cyber school. But as of right now, I'm a senior and I'm back in public school because I'm doing much better. So I'm able to connect with my friends and I'm really happy with that.
So let's give her a round of applause for that. We just heard Dawnia and Karen talking about how younger people with MS connect to each other on the internet. I've heard that you have quite the successful YouTube channel and a huge following. So tell us why you started the channel and what sort of content you like to share with your followers.
I have always had a YouTube channel. I used to make videos with my brother when we were a bit younger, but after I was diagnosed, I decided to implement more meaning into the videos that I posted. When it comes to content that I posted, I started to give advice to people, and I also recorded myself giving my injection to myself because I wanted to give people a deeper understanding when it came to MS. And I had a really good reaction when I posted those videos. People were surprised that I posted them because I'm only 17 right now. And I continue to do it, and I still post those videos, and I get really good reactions.
That's amazing. Coming from someone at 17 who didn't have the internet, I love that you have the confidence to show people what MS looks like.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about how sharing your story helps you.
I feel as though telling the people around me it's really helpful. I feel like talking about your mental and physical stability is really helpful when it comes to having a disease like this. I don't think it's like the best idea to keep it to yourself because you should get as much advice as possible when it comes to coping with the illness.
And I know that you have a lot of supporters, and obviously, and so tell me who your biggest supporters are and what they do to help you.
My biggest supporters are my family and my friends. My mom, who came here with me, she's right over there.
Hi, Mom.
She's been here since I was first diagnosed. She's been with me since I was first diagnosed at the neurologist, and she's now here with me, and she's watching me being able to spread awareness for teens with MS as well, and I'm really grateful for it. My friends and my family, and like my siblings, they all ask me how I'm doing, and I'm really grateful for the support they have given me ever since being diagnosed.
So in a few minutes, we're going to watch a video project you were a part of with the Society. Why do you think this project is going to help you and other kids with MS and their families?
I feel like whoever watches it is going to be able to gain confidence because me and these 3 other kids in the video, we all portray ourselves amazingly, and we have a really good mindset when it comes to having MS. We've all accepted the fact that we have it, and I feel as though whoever gets to see that can hopefully take it in and hopefully gain confidence from it.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Hannah, for sharing your story today and for joining us on this journey.
Thank you for having me.
So what does it mean to be relevant for people affected by MS, to truly meet them where they are? And how can the Society continue to be a movement and evolve to the rapidly changing world? Well, we're continuously improving. We're continuously learning and listening and finding out new ways to support, to advocate, to connect people to the MS movement. And there's still so much work to be done, but as a movement, there's already been tremendous progress.
For example, earlier this year, we noticed a gap in the representation of children and teens in the MS community. Although MS typically occurs in adults, as we all know, there are between 8,000 and 10,000 children and teens with MS in the United States. The average age of diagnosis is shifting younger all the time because of changes in screening criteria and the diagnostic tools like MRI. MS is affecting more children, teens, and young adults than ever before. And as we just heard from Hannah, the experience of a younger person living with MS is drastically different from an adult. They're trying to navigate life with MS on top of the normal stresses of just growing up. They're facing decisions about their present and their future that are made more complex by the need to navigate MS in addition to the challenges of transitioning into adulthood.
So we decided we had a critical role to play, a critical opportunity to do more for kids affected by MS and their families, to drive awareness about that, to provide much more relevant resources, even just doing a better job at representing them as part of the MS movement is so critical to reaching out to them so they can see themselves and their families and others like them in our movement. So as part of that effort was creating this video we're about to see to highlight the stories of young people who are living with MS, like Hannah and others, so that families feel confident and hopeful that they can manage this disease and see themselves in the MS movement. Let's take a look.
My name is Joshua and I'm 7 years old.
Hi, my name's Doug. I play center for my high school team.
I'm Hannah. I play with my dog. I listen to music. I enjoy photography and I like taking pictures of everything around me.
My name is Peter. This is Harlem. I live right here, right in the corner. I like playing basketball and I live a great life.
I'm 18 years old and I have MS.
I'm 17 years old and I was diagnosed with MS.
I'm 14 years old and have multiple sclerosis.
And I have MS, and I forget stuff, and sometimes my legs hurt, and I can't see.
I woke up and I could not feel my lower half. It was completely numb and I was very confused.
He was sitting in front of a 40-inch television 10 feet away and said, you know, if I close one eye, I can hear the people, but I can't see them on the TV.
And then it turns out, you know, it was optic neuritis, so I go to the hospital and they had me, you know, in an MRI machine and they saw the lesions on my brain. And at first, you know, it was really scary. It was because I didn't know anything about it whatsoever.
We don't have a cure for MS, but we do have treatments. And we have good ways to help prevent now long-term disability.
When I first found out Joshua had MS, I was a little confused. I didn't know too much information on MS. I also, from past experiences with other doctors, misdiagnosing him and just brushing me off so much that when he was diagnosed with MS, it was hard for me to take that in.
The National Multiple Sclerosis Society has a wealth of information to help children, teenagers, and their families find informed and accurate information about multiple sclerosis.
I have to inject myself after use a treatment. This is what it looks like.
There are other teenagers and children living with multiple sclerosis, and the National MS Society and other resources can help you connect with other teenagers who can help you through this journey as well.
Some advice that I would have for somebody that is newly diagnosed is, to be honest, just keep living your life.
Do not panic. It can be a serious problem, but it's not the end of the world.
There are really no limitations. You can be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, astronaut, teacher, but there's nothing that you can't do, and we can work together to help overcome any challenges that occur.
One thing that MS has taught me about myself is that I'm definitely a stronger person than I really thought I ever could be.
I'm brave because I go to the doctor and do tests, and I'm not scared.
The MS doesn't stop me, just saying. I just feel like a normal kid, and that's it.
MS has made me a stronger person. It's just made me think that I can get through anything. After I've been told that I have MS, I can accomplish anything that I set myself to do.
Gosh, as a mother of 2 children, that video really resonates with me. I don't know about the rest of you, but I want to live in a world where my children never have to worry about hearing the words, "You have MS." I want to thank Genentech for their amazing support of the video. The video and the accompanying resources will help families and children with MS know that they are not alone. Representation is very important, and we're working hard to share stories of how kids with MS may face unique challenges, but they can still live a full and rewarding life with their families and the National MS Society by their side.
So in addition to this video, there are other important MS outreach materials that are creating a comprehensive resource guide for people affected by MS and people affected by pediatric MS. The video you just saw, there is a longer version of that video which will include more resources, a deeper look into the disease progression, and advice from experts for families on how to manage their MS. Kids get MS too, and we need to continue to get better at understanding of what they need and what their families look for in support. Reaching out to families and kids who have MS is just one part of making sure that everybody with MS gets connected to the resources and gets connected to the information that they need as early as possible so that it can make as big of a difference as possible in the outcomes of their disease.
In order to make the biggest impact of everyone affected by MS, regardless of where they are on their journey, we must continue to reach out in innovative new ways. The knowledge that nearly 1 million people live with MS is powerful, but it also calls us to work harder every day so we can connect with the 40% who are not yet engaged with us. To start closing the gap, we begin to test new and innovative ways to find people with MS where they are, to provide them with the content and information they need, and to drive them to connect with us. In a few short months, this effort has helped us connect to almost 4,000 people and learn a lot about what we need to do to adjust to this rapidly changing world and meet people with MS where they need us to be.
So I hope you're as proud of the progress that we've made as I am, and know that there's so much more to be accomplished. It couldn't have been done, any of this couldn't have been done without each and every person in this room. And as we've learned through our time together today, we've made great accomplishments, but we are not done. There's so much more that we need to do. And we won't be done until there are cures for every single person with this disease. And with your help, I am confident that we can continue to evolve, we can continue to learn, and the society becomes something that everybody affected by MS can be part of.
Now I want John and all of you to just join me for a moment in imagining this. What if we did connect with every one of the nearly 1 million people affected by MS? How powerful would it be to know that each one of them has what they need to live the best life they can, to never feel alone or lost in facing this disease? What will it take for us to get there?
Well, 73 years ago, Sylvia Lowry took one small action, one simple newspaper ad that sparked a whole wide movement. Dawnia did the same thing by creating a support group and getting connected to young people who have MS. So if one person's passion and their perseverance can lead to a whole movement that has led to more breakthroughs than the world has seen in any other neurological disease, imagine what our actions can do and what we can achieve today and how much different your support can make.
And every single day, people across the country are doing something, large or small, to make an impact. The methods and the pace at which we're connecting to people may have changed a little bit over the last 73 years, but the reason that we're doing it hasn't. Whether you're a volunteer, an event participant, a board member, or a person living with MS, you are all here for a reason, to create a world free of MS. This is my favorite thing from the conference. The next chapter in our story could be the last chapter for MS. We can be the generation that ends the disease and changes the lives of millions of people affected by MS today. But to be honest, it's only possible with all of you.
So Debra and I are going to help you make the first step, and going to make with one small homework assignment that you have. So here it is. On your table is a bookmark. And what we want you to do is, at the end of the session, we want you to mark your next chapter on this bookmark. Take a pen, write down, and think of the answer to this question. What will you commit to do to propel the MS movement forward, to change the world for every person affected by this disease? So, this year, I will commit to you that I will be active and loud in advocacy. My legislators will know me, they know what I care about, and what I expect each of them to do about it. So, how about you, Debra?
Well, those of you that know me well know that I love to get mucky in Chicago, and I would really love it if you would join me. But I personally plan to double my fundraising efforts this year by taking my 13-year-old daughter to her first Bike MS event. Thank you.
Nice.
And in addition to our ideas and the ones that we've shared up in the screen, we want you to use these as a starting point or to create your own. And when you're done, share your commitment with the rest of your table. We've left a few extras of these lying around for you. Give them to your friends, your family, your colleagues, or someone new that you want to know about the movement.
So we can't wait to see the ideas that you have written down as the next chapter of the MS movement, as you continue to make commitments to continue to propel forward the MS movement. So we hope as you leave here today, you feel inspired, you feel motivated, you feel connected to so many others who want to attain the same thing, and that you feel equipped to grow the MS movement as you go out and spread the word to the world.
Now, before we let you go, we'd like to give a final thank you to our conference sponsors, Biogen, Celgene, and Genentech. Our contributing sponsors, Mallinckrodt and Merkel, and our corporate partner showcase sponsors, EMD Serono, Halo Branded Solutions, and Mobility Works. I hope that everyone has a fantastic day and a safe travel home. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Great.